Welcome dear student for this ninth lecture on nuclear physics and the final theory which we'll be discussing in today's lecture, Fermi's beta decay theory. This theory again won Nobel Prize to this great man is there on the screen, Enrico Fermi, the Italian physicist who migrated to United States and as all of you know in the Manhattan Project of preparing atomic bomb, he was the one of the chief architect and a big name in the field of nuclear physics. He developed a theory which could explain the continuous nature of the energy spectrum of beta particles. And he took over from Pauli's neutrino hypothesis. He took it very seriously. He took that hypothesis very seriously that the energy which is released in a beta decay process is shared between electron, neutrino, and daughter. Of course, daughter is very heavy, so it's primarily shared between electron and neutrino, and that's how the missing energy can be accounted. But the biggest challenge was how to explain the continuous nature of the graph and how this problem is very different from alpha decay problem. In alpha decay, as you know, the alpha particles are already created before it actually starts, which actually succeeds to tunnel out. So it puts in a lot of effort, and there is a probability coupled with the probability of tunneling results in alpha decay process. While there is no such things here, let's look into the assumptions in the Fermi's beta decay theory. The beta decay process is analogous to emission of photon in an atom. You know how a photon is emitted. Photon is not created before its emission. It's only when the electron makes a transition from one energy level to another energy level, the difference in energy level results in emission of photon. And this is similarly, the beta particles are emitted only during the beta emission and not beforehand. For any decay to take place, there has to be some potential which will take the state from initial state to the final state. Now, in a beta decay process, the perturbation theory of quantum mechanics is used, which is beyond the scope of the syllabus. In the perturbation theory, what is presumed is you have a system, and a small disturbance in the system is sufficient to take it to another state. And it's presumed that in this entire process, more or less, the energy remains constant within the domain of the law of conservation of energy. So there is a transition happening from initial state I to final state F, driven by a small disturbance in the system. That theory is used, and what we'll be doing is we'll be directly using the results of that theory later on. Now, if you look, this is the second assumption. Now, beta particles are created at the instant of emission. We've just seen the neutrino has zero mass, rest mass, or very small compared to that of electron. That we have also seen earlier. And the Q of the nuclear decay shared between beta and neutron particles in a beta decay process. These are the five assumptions in the beta decay theory proposed by Fermi. Now, let's come to the theory. The transition probability. This is the transition probability, or you call it a decay constant. Probability that parent shall decay into daughter through beta decay route in unit time, lambda IF, is given as NPdP, 2 pi by h cross the modulus of HIF square rho f. Let me explain this now. Now this equation has to be accepted by you. It is a result of the perturbation theory, which tells you that this, let me explain each term here. NPdP means the average beta particles which are emitted in the momentum range dp. So how many particles here? This tells you the number of beta particles emitted in momentum range dp in unit time. and that is same as the transition probability, or the probability that the particle, the state changes from initial state I to final state F. HIF here is given by this integration psi f star v psi I dv. Okay, why psi f is the wave function of the final state. You know what is the wave function? This is of the final state, means all nucleons together, the combination of all of them is represented by a wave function. Psi f is the complex conjugate of psi f star. V is the operator or the potential which is responsible for the transition, that is V, and psi I is the wave function of the initial state. So this tells you the matrix element of this integration. This is the integration which is carried out, and for that you need to first have the information of psi I and psi I. For all practical purpose, in the perturbation theory, it is presumed that there is no change in energy, or there is a marginal change in energy in the initial. So for all practical purpose, you can consider the energy to be constant. So this is a constant term which we right now don't have to evaluate. We are not concerned about that. It's some constant and multiplied by rho f. Rho f is density of states. Let me explain what is this thing. As HIF is the matrix element for the interaction. You will study this in your quantum mechanics classes in detail. Rho f is the density of the final states. Density of the final states means number of final states existing in the unit energy range centered around EF. Number of final states which are available per unit energy range centered around EF is called density of states, rho f. Now all that you need to do is, if you look at this expression, you will be wondering what is it. So here you have 2 pi h upon h cross constant, HIF square, which is a constant. This entire term is a constant, and all that the number of this lambda IF is going to be dependent is rho EF. So if you get an expression for rho EF and substitute here, then all that we need to do is, we are basically trying to get this continuous nature of graph like this. This could be your, this is your number, and this could be your energy or momentum, whatever it is, energy and momentum. So this is the continuous nature of the graph. So this n is the total number of particles emitted, and if you talk about NPdP, means we are talking about a small part of that, the number of particles emitted in this momentum range P and P plus delta P. So if you integrate it over the entire momentum range, you will get the entire graph. So we are just trying to see if we are able to recreate this part of this graph, and the rest of the graph can be obtained if you integrate the number. If you have NPdP, number of particles in this momentum range dp, and then if you integrate it from 0 to p, then that will give you the total number n. Okay. Now first let's calculate the expression for NP. This is the transition probability, number of particles emitted in the unit energy range, in the energy range in the momentum range dp in unit time. So for that, let's first calculate rho EF, and that is the only term we need to calculate. Now according to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, your delta x, delta px nearly equal to h. Okay, so this is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which says that you cannot measure position and momentum accurately. There is uncertainty in position measurement and momentum measurement, and the product is equal to h, Planck's constant. So your px on the y-axis, x on the x-axis. Here you can see that this is your delta x, delta px. So in short, you can't say for certainty that the particle is here, here, or here, and this product of Ex and delta and x, if you actually measure, it could be anywhere in this particular square. So there is uncertainty. There is no fixed position in the phase space. This is called phase space. Phase space of momentum and position. In this phase space, you cannot put a point. You have to put a square of area equal to h. This is the area of the h. So this is the minimum position in which, so if you have to have next particle, then the next particle can be somewhere here in this block. You cannot have two particles in the same block with this uncertainty h. So it puts restriction on the number of available states because of uncertainty principle. So technically you can have infinite number of states, but that's not the case. But because of uncertainty, the number of available states will get reduced. So in three dimension, what will happen is you will have a cube. In 2 dimension you will have a square. So if you have a cube like this, so this volume would be equal to h cube. Okay, this volume is equal to h cube. This is the h cube. So this imposes restriction on the number of distinct states that can occupy a given space volume. Right. Now, let us consider the electron. Here you can have the emitted electrons here to be localized in volume V. So let's consider V to be the volume in which the electrons are emitted and momentum interval P plus delta P. So V is the volume in the momentum of the electrons which are emitted in the momentum range delta P, or in the momentum between P and P plus delta P. So you have the phase space volume is equal to V into delta P. This is the total phase space volume. Now for simplicity, let us take V is equal to 1. So I have phase space volume reduced to delta P. Delta P is the volume in momentum space between electrons in the momentum range dp. That is, you have a shell of radius p. You have another shell of radius p plus delta p like this. So all these particles which are in this range, we are talking about this shell area between P and P plus delta P, because it's a sphere. So the area volume of a sphere is 4 by 3 pi P plus delta P cube minus 4 by 3 pi P cube. So that will be the volume in the momentum space. The spatial space volume, we have taken it as 1. So this will be this. So just try to calculate. So if you do the calculation, each state can't have, okay, now momentum space of the momentum is 4 by 3 pi cube volume. This is the P plus delta P radius 4 pi 3 pi P plus delta P cube, and this is for P momentum space, it is 4 by 3 pi P cube. Okay, so now what happens is the number of available states for electrons would be now given as 4 by 3 pi P plus delta P cube minus 4 by 3 pi P cube. This is the total number of theoretically possible states, and h cube divided by h cube, because h cube puts a restriction on the number of available states for electrons. If an electron is here, the next electron cannot be in a cube of h cube, so you'll have to divide it by h cube. So though technically you would say that if there was no uncertainty principle, h cube would not have been there, and you would have just had 4 by 3 pi P. In classical mechanics you would have had P plus delta P cube. This is the number of available states. But now, because of the restriction imposed because of uncertainty principle, you will have to divide it by h cube. So that will give you the number of available states for electrons. So if you do the calculation, if I expand this, P cube plus delta P cube plus this minus this, Ignoring this, what happens is 4 by 3, I am just trying to ignore delta p cube, and then I know that delta p is very very small, so that 3p delta p square is very very less than 3 delta p square. So you have the number of available states for electron as 4 pi p square delta p h cube. This is becomes the expression for number of available states for electron, okay, and that is the number of available states of the electron in the momentum range delta p for electrons. Now similarly you do it for neutrino. So the neutrino, instead of Pe you will have P nu, instead of Pe here you will have P nu. So this becomes the expression for the total number of available states for both, that is for neutrino. For both electrons and neutrinos you have to take the product of the two, and you have this expression 16 pi square p square delta p p nu square delta p nu divided by h6, because h cube here, it's not visible here, this is divided by h6. Okay, this will be the expression. Now we are not interested in the energy states alone, but we want total number of available states centered around EF. So I differentiate it with respect to EF. So what happens is this additional term comes in EF. So you have this expression. So you want to solve this expression, or you have already written an expression, but there is a problem here. You can't measure P nu experimentally because neutrinos are invisible particles. We have seen this in the earlier lecture. So we would like to convert all those terms which are having nu, P nu here, dP nu here. So these terms will be converted into some other form. So that's what we are trying to do, replacing the terms in equation A concerning neutrino. This is the equation A. So we will try to convert that. So let's see this, how we are doing that. E nu square is equal to P nu square C square plus M nu square, relativistic. Now M nu mass, you have considered neutrino mass to be negligible. So E nu square becomes P nu square into C square. So P nu becomes E nu upon C, and E nu is difficult to measure, so I can convert E nu into EF plus minus E upon C, because you know that you have seen that energy of electron plus energy of neutrino is equal to Q, or final energy. It's all the same. Right. So this can be written like this. So P nu square becomes, now the beauty of this expression is we have converted a new term, neutrino term, into a term which is measurable. You can measure EF, that is Q can be measured, energy of electron can be measured using a detectors. So this is measurable because we want to perform an experiment and see whether we are able to get that expression, whether Fermi's theory is correct or not. Okay. So let us differentiate dP nu by dF. So I'll get 1 upon C. So if I substitute all these terms, I get 16 pi square. Simple mathematics. Please take a piece of paper and pen and note it down. Try to solve it. 16 pi square P square EF minus E square C square delta dP H6 multiplied by E by C. That is your rho F. Okay. Now you can see this entire, all these terms here are measurable. You can measure P, you can measure EF, P, delta P, that is the momentum range which you want, you can choose. C, velocity of light, at H is Planck's constant. So let's now put this value of rho F into the transition probability here. Now if you put this here, and I consider this to be some constant right now, you don't worry about this. This is a constant, the Hamiltonian, which is responsible from initial state to final state. That does not change the initial Hamiltonian, the energy, the final energy. There is no change here, that's the assumption. Now, so if I put all this, substitute here the value of rho EF, rho F. Now what I do is I am rearranging the term, nothing else. Can you see this h cross here? H cross is replaced by h into 2 pi. So 2 pi goes in the numerator. So this 2 pi multiplied by 16 gives you 64 pi f4. Rest of the terms remain as it is. Now I want to convert h into h cross. So h cross is equal to basically h upon pi. So I have got 128 pi 7 p square pf minus e square dp hif 2 pi cube c cube h7. Right. Now what I am doing is I am multiplying the numerator and denominator by 2 pi cube because I want to convert this into h cross. So 64 into 2 will become 128. I got pi 7 here. Okay. So h, and here can you see this 7? This is h7. So h7, so 128 divided by h7 would give you 1 upon, and of course pi 7 is your pi 7 going to give you 1 upon h cross 7. So that is what I get, h cross 7, 2 pi cube p square ef minus e square. This is the expression for lambda if I get. Okay. Now if I look at the graph, if I plot the graph, this is, if you theoretically plot this graph would, basically the challenge would be, if this equation is correct, then if I plot a graph between lambda if and momentum, this is also nothing but lambda if is nothing but number of particles in the momentum range dp against momentum, I should get a part of this graph. That is, this is the complete graph, but I should get whatever momentum range I choose. This is your delta p, so I should be able to get this graph. This is your n number and this is your momentum p. Now finally, in the next lecture we will see if Fermi's beta decay theory is correct, then using this equation, if I plot the graph between the number and momentum, I should be able to get the the graph which is observed experimentally. If I am able to get that graph, the continuous nature of the energy spectrum, the theory is correct. Otherwise, there is some defect in the theory. So let me just go back. Everything in this entire discussion, everything boils down to the term rho E, density of states. And if you are calculating the density of the states, there is a number of states available centered around EF. EF is the final energy. And if you are able to calculate this expression, if you want to calculate this expression, I need an expression for rho EF. So we have done all this exercise to measure rho EF, and I will just post this video, and if you have any difficulty, please let me know, and I can have a discussion later on. Okay, so finally what I am doing is I get an expression for rho EF here. You can see this is the expression for rho EF. Now after this I substitute the rho EF into the expression for lambda IF, and I get this expression. Now my next job is to plot a graph and check whether this expression is correct or not. How do I know whether the graph is correct? I should be able to get this nature of the graph, either for beta minus or beta plus particle. This is the momentum spread, this is the energy spread. You know that energy and momentum can be converted into each other's form. If you are measuring kinetic energy, then you know that E is equal to P square upon 2m. So you will get P is equal to under root 2me. So if you do this, you will get this graph. Or if you can measure momentum directly, you can convert it into energy, whichever form. Thank you.